Hello. So I know that a lot of you have been asking about my background and my sewing story and all of that and where I was trained and all of those questions. And honestly, I have been putting it off. And I'll tell you why. Well, several reasons. The main reason is I wasn't trained anywhere. I trained myself pretty much. And so sometimes I've had people come on and say, well, I am a professional tailor. Why don't you know this? Well, I am a couture this. Why don't you know this? And I've trained myself. It's as easy as that. Now, the timeline and the method and what led to what is kind of a long story. So I guess if I had to start somewhere, you know, as a little girl playing with fabric and things like that. But I would say that it really kicked in gear when I was about 15. And I got my first real job working at House of Fabrics, which is what Joann Fabrics was on the west side of the Rockies in Arizona. And, you know, back then, nothing's computerized. You had to do all of the fractions and everything on your own and on your little calculator and all, calculating eighths and percents off and everything. So, different world. But one of the qualifications when they hired me is they asked, do you know how to sew? And I said, yeah, I know how to sew. I passed their math test. They said, okay, starting on Thursday. So I went home and got out my mom's sewing machine and a pattern and decided I need to learn how to sew for real. And I just kind of figured it out. My grandmother on my mom's side sewed. She made like our little dresses when I was a kid and things like that. So she knew the basics, you know, and I got the basic, you know, lay out a pattern like this. This is how the sewing machine works. This is basically how what the instructions say on a pattern, and then just take it from there. And yeah, so it was basically like someone would walk into the fabric store and they'd say, hey, I need to know how to put in a zipper. I didn't have a clue, but I'd get the zipper package and the instructions were on the back, and I would walk them through the instructions on the packet, go home, figure out how to put it on, so the next day, if I was asked again, I would know. And that's basically how I did just about everything. As I had a need to know, I'd figure it out. So I would say and I sewed all of my clothes in high school and things like that. And I would say my first big project was when I was about 17. I sewed all of the color guard uniforms for my high school. So I sewed 23 skirts, vests, and blouses for the color guard. So that was a big push to get, you know, things more standardized. And all worked at the fabric stores through college. I didn't go to college for fashion or anything. I actually went to college for mechanical engineering, but, you know, that is another story. And at different points in my adult life, you know, I made all my prom dresses. I made all my sister's sorority gowns. I made all of those things. You know, in each project you do, you have to learn a new skill set to go along with it. And I made my wedding dress. I made my sister's wedding dress. I fixed a lot of wedding dresses. You know, you just start doing things like that. So when I was an adult and wanted to make a little extra money, you know, you do what a lot of people do. Print up a little business card, post it in fabric stores saying, I will do sewing, and people just call you. And, you know, at one point I was living in Los Angeles and I got a phone call that said, hey, can you help with ballet costumes? And I was thinking, sure, it's probably like sewing some sequin stretchy stuff on a leotard for little girls. By the next week, I am in a studio getting the sketches from the designer, and I have to create all the designs from those sketches on a full-blown Nutcracker presentation. You know, it was a steep learning curve, but I figured it out and figured out how, you know, people need to be able to move, what's going to hold up, how things are going to appear, what fabrics can be used. You know, big steep learning curve, but you figure it out. And that's pretty much how it was. It's always under pressure, what's going to happen next. And it's worked the same way with bridesmaid dresses. Pretty soon I'm making fleets of bridesmaid dresses. But I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't enjoy that process. Bridal parties tend to get a little stressed out, and it just wasn't my favorite. So that's how I learn. And a lot of it before the internet, you couldn't just go on and Google something or look up a YouTube video on how to do something. It was just trial and error, you know. I put in zippers terribly wrong, probably 100 times before I figured out the best way for me to do it. You know, just things like that. So I can't really say, that's why I've been putting this off, is because I wasn't trained one place. I've read a lot of books. I've, you know, tried to pick up hints from people here and there. I've looked at the insides of other clothing that people had that I was able to see how they were put together. Just things, honestly, just things. You know, I made my husband's shirts while he was a cowboy. I made all of my kids' clothes. I made my clothes. I made things for family. I made a lot of things. I've done all that, you know, and I enjoy it. And it's not just sewing. I have that same mindset with everything. I wanted to build a house, so I built a house. I figured it out. I figured out how to design a house. I figured out how to build a house. I wanted to understand how to make artisan cheeses. So I got the milk cow, milked my cow, figured it all out, made my own cheese house, you know. It's just things, and that's just how I work. So I'm sorry if it's very disappointing, because I feel like from a lot of the comments, people are expecting, oh, that I trained here or I trained there in the house of this or the studio of that. And it's all honestly been a whole lot of work just on my own. Figuring out how to take things nice and slow and be very careful. Because if I was working with someone else's fabric or with a customer's garment or something, I wouldn't get a second chance with that. I would have to do it right that time, and if I ruined it, I was ruined. So that's as simple as I can get. So I hope that answers your questions. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.